Welcome to another episode from English Plus Shorts. Today we're taking a deep dive into an intriguing question. If you could eliminate one common misconception or misunderstanding in the world, what would it be and why? Now, before we jump into opinions or definitive answers, let's explore the very nature of misconceptions. Have you ever stopped to think about how many beliefs we cling to simply because they've been repeated over time? Sometimes we hold ideas not because they're true, but because they're familiar. For example, consider the idea that success comes solely from hard work. It's a narrative repeated in every self-help book and motivational talk. But is that the whole story? What about circumstance, chance, or even the different definitions of success in various cultures? When you think about misconceptions, ask yourself, what shapes these beliefs? Is it your upbringing, the media we consume, or perhaps the simple human tendency to seek patterns even when there are none? Think about those old sayings that no longer serve us. Do you ever wonder if eliminating just one of these misconceptions could pave the way for new, more inclusive narratives? Let's take a moment to consider some of the angles. One perspective is that misconceptions can limit our understanding of people and cultures. For instance, the idea that intelligence is fixed can prevent individuals from embracing the possibility of growth and learning. Imagine if we could dissolve that belief entirely. How might our educational systems, our workplaces, and even our personal relationships transform? Would we become more curious, more forgiving of mistakes, and more eager to support one another's growth? Then there's the funny side of how misconceptions evolve. Picture the myths around historical figures. The notion that some leaders were completely infallible, or conversely, utterly flawed. These ideas often oversimplify complex lives. So when you think about which misconception you'd erase, could it be one that oversimplifies the nature of human experience? What if we began to see more nuance in every story, accepting that every person has both strengths and vulnerabilities? On the flip side, eliminating a misconception isn't always straightforward. Misconceptions sometimes act as mental shortcuts or heuristics that help us process the overwhelming amount of information around us. But here's a thought. What happens when those shortcuts lead us astray? Consider stereotypes that persist about entire groups of people. Removing such a misconception might open the door to richer, more diverse narratives. But then again, are we ready to embrace the complexities that come with that openness? As we wander through these thoughts, ask yourself, how do these mistaken beliefs affect your day-to-day life? Could a single change in perspective lead to a cascade of positive effects? Perhaps you've noticed that when you question an old idea, you suddenly see a world full of possibility, a world where challenges become opportunities for learning. This kind of reflective thinking isn't just abstract philosophy. It can influence how we can interact with each other, make decisions, and even how we vote. Now, let's consider another angle. What if the misconception we choose to eliminate is so ingrained in society that its absence would leave a sort of void? Sometimes, common misunderstandings serve as the glue that holds together cultural traditions or shared humor. For example, some misunderstandings in pop culture become inside jokes that foster community. Would the loss of such a misconception lead to disconnection, or would it pave the way for more meaningful interactions? Throughout our lives, we've all been conditioned to accept certain truths without question. Now, I'm asking you to reflect on the educational experiences that instilled these beliefs. How might we reconstruct our learning if we let go of these outdated ideas? What new questions would emerge? And how might these questions lead us to fresh perspectives? It's also worth pondering how technology and social media contribute to the spread of misconceptions. Algorithms often serve us content that reinforces our existing views, creating echo chambers where misunderstandings fester. Imagine a digital world where these filters are removed, where diversity of thought is celebrated rather than feared. What might that world look like? How could our online interactions become more constructive if we challenge the misconceptions served to us every day? As you listen, consider the ripple effects. Eliminating one misconception might lead to a chain reaction of deeper understanding and empathy. But then, might we also face unintended consequences? Could removing one false belief force us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves or society? And is that a challenge worth embracing? Before we wrap up today's episode, I want you to reflect on this. What personal misconception have you carried for far too long? Not to provide an answer right away, but simply to ponder why it exists in your mind. Perhaps share your thoughts later on our website or on Patreon. And join the conversation about how dismantling these misconceptions could empower us all to see the world with new eyes. I'd love to hear your ideas, even if they contradict one another. That's totally fine. After all, dialogue thrives on diversity of thought. So, as you leave this episode, consider the possibility that every misconception we confront is a step toward a richer, more empathetic understanding of life. Well, thank you, my friends, for joining me on this reflective journey. Be sure to visit EnglishPlusPodcast.com or our Patreon page to share your thoughts and continue the conversation. Until next time, keep questioning and keep exploring.